Mock drafts are stupid. They're never right. This one's going to be wrong. So why in the hell are you watching this video? Even when we know that only 5 to 7 of these picks in mock drafts are going to be right every year, we still like to see what our favorite team is thinking given the situation that they're in. And that's exactly what we're doing in this video. We're going to present realistic situations that could happen team by team. Round 1, pick 1 through 32. We're going to throw in some trades in there as well that could realistically happen on night 1. This video also includes timestamps, so feel free to skip around. Let's start with the 2026 NFL Draft with round 1, pick 1, belonging to the Las Vegas Raiders, where they're going to select Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana. This is a given. This is going to be a very long video, so if there's a pick that's pretty self-explanatory, I'm not going to give too in-depth of an analysis, but I will also include percentages of this pick happening and what other players they might be taking. So with the Raiders, 100% chance that they're going to be taking Fernando Mendoza. There is no other player in question. It's going to be Mendoza. Moving on with the number 2 overall pick with the New York Jets, they're in a situation where they can just take the best player available. David Bailey and Arvell Reese are being talked amongst as the 2 best players. They're going to select one of them, and David Bailey is more inclined to be that Jets selection. He is more linked to the Jets, according to sources. They also have the number 16 pick if they want to get a little bit more fancy with specific positions, but you've got to take the best player available, and that is David Bailey. The Jets also had a top 30 visit scheduled with Bailey, but they canceled that because they already have all the information that they need. More than likely, this is going to be Bailey. Now, the percentage of this happening, I'm going to say 65%. It's either David Bailey, or 35%, it's going to be Arvell Reese. But one of those 2 players, if something happens on draft night, they like Reese a little bit more, Bailey's draft stock falls, whatever, it could switch up. But I'm leaning David Bailey, 65% chance that the Jets are going to select him. And on to the 3rd overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals. So between David Bailey and Arvell Reese, whichever one is still available that the Jets did not take, that's where I have the Cardinals selecting either one of those players. Defensively, they run a 3-4 defense. They retain Nick Rallis, their defensive coordinator. And on paper last year, with all the signings that they had and all the draft picks, you would assume that the Cardinals would have rise to be this top 10 defense last year, but they were slightly underwhelming. Maybe Reese is that player that could catapult them into that top 10, at least top 12 defense conversation in the NFL. And the percentages that I have of this happening, I'm going to say 65% chance that they take Arvell Reese, 28% chance that the Jets do not take David Bailey and they fall to the Cardinals. So I have the Cardinals taking Bailey with a 28% chance. 5% chance that it's Jeremiah Love because he's been talked about, but James Conner's still there. You have Trey Benson, Tyler Algier signed with a 2-year contract. I don't think it's going to be Jeremiah Love. And then a 2% chance that it might be Francis Maianoa. So they could take CeCe here at number 3. That would be a little bit of a reach, but according to Peter Schrager, who is well connected with all 32 teams, he has stated that the Cardinals do love Maianoa. Maybe something crazy happens, but highly unlikely. It's probably going to be Arvell Reese. On to number 4 with that 4th pick, the Tennessee Titans. This is a very interesting pick because they have a lot of holes that they need to fill on offense, on defense. This offense was not the best last year. You need an offensive line. You could use a Cowboy player, but I don't think there's a blue chip prospect on the offensive line to take in the top 5. But who is a blue chip prospect that could help your offense? It is Jeremiah Love, and that's what I think the Titans are going to do, selecting Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. And this is where stats could be a little bit misleading because people could look on paper and say, well, Tony Pollard was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Why are you taking a running back with a top 5 pick? If you actually watch the Titans play last season, his numbers were skewed, especially against the 49ers and the Browns, those 2 explosive games that he had back-to-back later on in the season. So that's what catapulted him to being a 1,000-yard rusher. He's going to be turning 29 when the season starts. The percentages that I have of this happening, 69, nice percent chance that they draft Jeremiah Love. 30% chance that they take Sonny Styles. I'm not ruling out Styles with the number 4 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Does seem like a Robert Saleh kind of pick, but I am going to go with offense and take Jeremiah Love. And a 1% chance that either David Bailey or Arvell Reese falls to them, but 69% chance it's going to be Jeremiah Love. And to round out the top 5, the New York Giants with number 5, they're going to be taking Sonny Styles, linebacker out of Ohio State. We talked about blue chip prospects with Jeremiah Love being one of them. Sonny Styles, also blue chip prospect, cannot miss. And if everything works out, the starting linebacker for the Giants, for John Harbaugh's led defense for the next 10 years. For someone with his production that he had at Ohio State, mixed with his athleticism, I was in the stands at Lucas Oil and I watched Sonny Styles run that 40-yard dash. My mouth was open. Pause. The entire stadium could not believe it. This is a pick that could never steer any team wrong. He's going to be a good player. Sonny Styles to the New York Giants. The likelihood of this happening, 62% chance that the Giants are going to be taking Sonny Styles. There's a 35% chance that I have them taking a wide receiver. So that's Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, or Jordan Tyson, the top 3 receivers in this draft. And then a 3% chance that it might be Jeremiah Love. I am not ruling out another running back to pair with Cam Skattebo. I think that's going to be a little bit later on in the draft you're going to see from the Giants. I don't think this high, but maybe a 3% chance that they do take Jeremiah Love. Let's keep moving along to the Cleveland Browns with the number 6 overall pick. They also have the number 24th pick, so they need a wide receiver and an offensive tackle. I believe that they're going to be drafting both those needs in the first round, so it's just a matter of, do we take a lineman or do we take a receiver? When comparing the wide receiver talent versus the offensive tackle talent, you can still get a very productive, startable offensive tackle later on in the draft at number 24. When it comes to wide receivers, even though this class is pretty deep, at number 24, the top 5, top 6 wide receivers may already be gone by then. You don't want to take that risk, so you take the best receiver off the board. And right now, I have Carnell Tate going to the Cleveland Browns. This is also one of those picks that's pretty self-explanatory. Jerry Jeudy's your top target. Maybe they see Harold Fannin as a top target. Either way, the Cedric Tillman experiment hasn't worked out at wide receiver 2. You take Carnell Tate, who could be your productive franchise cornerstone receiver for the next 5 years at least. The odds of this happening at number 6, do they take a receiver or an offensive tackle, it's going to be 60-40 in my eyes. 60% chance that they take Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson if there's another receiver that they prefer over the other. And then a 40% chance that they take an offensive tackle. Could be a selection for the Cleveland Browns at 6. Moving on to the number 7 pick, the Washington Commanders. By the way, how beautiful were those jerseys that they released? In this mock draft, I said that I was going to mock some trades that could realistically happen on night 1. And the Commanders are a team that could realistically trade back because Josh Harris, the owner of the Commanders, stated earlier this offseason that they would be open to trading back because they need a second-round pick. They don't have one. And a team that does have a plethora of picks, 2 first-round picks, and also a pick in the top of the second, the Kansas City Chiefs. So what I'm mocking is that the Chiefs are going to be trading up from number 9, and they're also giving away their 40th overall pick at the top of the second to move up to number 7. And with that selection, I'm going to have the Kansas City Chiefs taking Reuben Bain Jr., edge rusher from Miami, with the number 7 overall pick. They need a starter on that defensive line opposite of George Karlaftis. They also need a cornerback, and this is great for the Chiefs because they do not have to give up their number 29th overall pick because they're only moving up 2 spots. So the number 40 pick should suffice, and at number 29, they can take their corner. And just like how the Chiefs traded up over the Saints to select Patrick Mahomes, could be doing the same thing to select Reuben Bain, who might have been taken at number 8 by the New Orleans Saints. The percentage that I have of all this happening, 97% chance that the Chiefs do take Reuben Bain if they were to trade up to number 7, and a 3% chance, not ruling it out, but I don't think it's likely, that they're going to be taking either Tate, Lemon, or Tyson. Now, if Reuben Bain is still available, the Chiefs don't get him, Commanders pass up, they don't trade down, I feel like the Saints could take Reuben Bain. If Bain is taken, it's going to be between whatever wide receiver they love that's remaining or Caleb Downs. Blue chip prospects, we've been talking about it in this mock draft. Caleb Downs is one of them, so that's the best player available. Let's go ahead and give the Saints Caleb Downs. If Carnell Tate, who is presumably the best wide receiver in this draft, falls to number 8, then it's kind of 50-50 between Downs and Tate. But the odds that I have of all of this happening, the Saints, 60% chance that they're going to be taking Caleb Downs, 30% chance that it's going to be either Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson, and then a rare 10% chance that in this particular mock draft, if the Chiefs trade up, that Reuben Bain would still be available. But I have the Saints more than likely taking Caleb Downs in this draft. Now let's go back to the Washington Commanders. Remember, they traded back from number 7 with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're on the clock at number 9. And the reason why they might also trade back, not just for that second-round pick, number 40 overall, but also because there realistically could be 3 players that they take at number 7. So if you trade back 2 spots, the Chiefs and the Saints take 2 of those 3 players. You just take whichever one is remaining. 3 players that they might be thinking about: Reuben Bain, taken by the Chiefs; Caleb Downs, taken by the Saints. The best remaining wide receiver is that 3rd player. So it's between Mekhi Lemon and Jordan Tyson, whichever one they favor. A lot of scouts out there are saying that Mekhi Lemon is a better prospect, so I'm just going to go ahead and say that Mekhi Lemon is going to be the pick for the Washington Commanders at number 9. The odds of all this happening, I'm going to say 54% chance that they take either Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson, a 40% chance that they take Caleb Downs if the Saints don't select Downs. Let's keep moving forward and round out the top 10 with the Cincinnati Bengals. Man, they need a lot of help on defense. And that's why I'm going to go with the cornerback out of LSU, Mansour Delane, who is, according to scouts, touted as the best cornerback available in this draft. There's a lot of defensive options. They lost Trey Hendrickson, but they need a cornerback outside of DJ Turner to really lock down this secondary. They're just year after year giving up way too many passing yards. Mansour Delane can be an immediate starter for the Cincinnati Bengals. The odds I have of this happening, it's going to be either 50% Mansour Delane or Jermod McCoy, the cornerback from Tennessee. I'm also giving a 50% chance. Pretty much what I'm saying is there's a 100% chance that the Bengals are addressing their secondary, and it's a 50-50 shot at which corner it's going to be. That was a pick that was pretty self-explanatory. No need for an in-depth analysis, so let's just move on to the Miami Dolphins. They have 2 first-round picks, number 11 and number 30, and the 2 big needs that they need to address: wide receiver after trading away Jalen Waddle, and cornerback. I believe that they're going to wait on cornerback. They might be a little bit scared seeing Delane taken at number 10 overall, but I think they're going to hold their ground and take a corner a little bit later on at number 30. And at number 11, they're going to go ahead and take the last remaining wide receiver of the big top 3, if you want to call it that, and that is Jordan Tyson. Tyson immediately will step in as that wide receiver 1 for Malik Willis. I'm going to say there's an 80% chance that they take either Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon, whichever one the Commanders do not take that might be remaining on the board, and a 20% chance that they go in the direction of corner, so that is either Delane or McCoy, depending on who the Bengals did not select. Let's move on to number 12 overall with the Dallas Cowboys. So 2 needs that they need to fill with their 2 first-round picks at number 12 and number 20, cornerback and edge rush. Keldrick Faulk is climbing up draft boards, and I would not be surprised if he were a top 15 pick. And the Cowboys could go in the direction of taking Faulk at number 12. Wouldn't be a surprise. But after seeing in this particular mock, the Bengals taking Mansour Delane, the Dolphins passing up on a corner to take a receiver, I think the Cowboys are not going to mess around and take one of, if not the best cornerback in this draft, and that is Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. I say he could be the best corner because in 2024, he was excellent. However, 2025 filled with a lot of injuries. So they're going off the 2024 season, and he could be the best cornerback prospect. 65% chance that it could be either McCoy or Delane, whichever one is not drafted between the Bengals or even the Dolphins. 25% chance that it could be Keldrick Faulk. And then a 10% chance they could be trading down. Don't rule out that possibility for the Dallas Cowboys. The Los Angeles Rams are a fascinating team to be selecting in the top 15. First off, this pick was supposed to be the Atlanta Falcons. We know last year they traded this away to acquire James Pierce. But a team that is in win-now mode, that when you look at their roster, they don't really have too much of a pressing need. 4 out of 5 of your offensive linemen next year are going to be free agents, so it makes sense to take an offensive lineman, but you're going to have an offensive lineman sit for the duration of 2026. Matthew Stafford is on a year-by-year basis on whether he's going to be returning or not. Why not select someone that is going to be an impactful player and is going to see playing time on the field? Sean McVay loves his 11 personnel. Believe it or not, if you watch 2025 LA Rams, you would think, well, if you're running 12 and 13s with Terrence Ferguson and Davis Allen and Colby Parkinson, you like 3 wide receiver sets? The answer is yes. They loved Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, Robert Woods, that kind of combination. They just really didn't have someone step in as that wide receiver 3 last season. So now the best wide receivers are Omar Cooper and Casey Concepcion. Between those two, whoever you favor, that's who I believe the Rams are going to take. I'm going to favor Casey Concepcion just because scouts and insiders are favoring him a little bit more than Omar Cooper. So I'm just going to follow their lead and say that it's KC that gets taken at number 13. And a little bit of inside info that I haven't shared with a lot of people that backs up the claim on why the Rams could go in the direction of wide receiver 3. A couple years ago, Mike Evans was heavily interested in signing with the Los Angeles Rams before he re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you may think to yourself, well, why would he want to sign with a team when you already have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua? You're going to be the wide receiver 3. Like, the Rams' response to that is, oh, believe me, trust me, Mike Evans, he will be on the field. They don't see it as 1, 2, 3. They see it as 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard receiver. The odds of all this happening, 50% chance that they take either Omar Cooper or Casey Concepcion at number 13. 30% chance that they trade up because F them picks. Why not? Let's get an impactful player. And a 20% chance that they actually do prepare for the future and take an offensive lineman. Now on to number 14, the Baltimore Ravens. We talked about one mock trade that happened between the Chiefs and the Commanders. And get this, we're mocking another trade happening in this mock draft between the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens. No offensive linemen have been taken, and the Lions need an edge rusher and an offensive lineman. I'm going to have them trade up to take the top selection at offensive tackle. In the official trade compensation that I have, the Lions trade their number 17 pick and their number 118 to the Baltimore Ravens to move up to number 14. And for the Ravens, this trade kind of makes a little bit of sense because one of their biggest needs is interior offensive linemen. And at this point, no offensive tackles have been taken. Then you have the Bucs and the Jets after that. I don't see either one of those teams taking an offensive lineman. They have bigger needs than that. So by the time it gets around to you at number 17, you more than likely can take the second best remaining offensive tackle or maybe the best interior offensive lineman. So I'm going to have the Lions taking Francis Maianoa out of Miami, and you're going to have a starting offensive tackle after Taylor Decker was released, opposite of Penei Sewell. A 25% chance that they don't trade up, but if they do trade up, seemingly 100% of the time, they're going to take an offensive tackle. That's one of their biggest needs. Let's finish off the top 15 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kenyon Sadiq, the top tight end on the board, still available. Buccaneers could use a tight end, but I don't believe 2 years in a row you go in the direction of getting playmakers in the first round. Remember last year, they got Emeka Egbuka, who ended up being a good selection, but it wasn't really a big need for them. We talked about Keldrick Falk climbing up draft boards as an edge rusher, and I believe he's going to be the selection for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 15. They signed A'Shawn Robinson, but that was only to a one-year deal. They need a starting edge rusher. Keldrick Falk is going to help them for many years to come, bolster that Buccaneers defensive line. The odds I have of all this happening, 80% chance that it's going to be Keldrick Falk, so highly likely that it's going to be an edge rusher if the mock falls the way that it does. A 13% chance that it's going to be Kenyon Sadiq because Jason Light could be like, F it, why not? Let's get another playmaker, pretty much another big wide receiver. Then a 7% chance that it could be a cornerback. So at this point, with McCoy and Delane taken, the next best remaining cornerbacks are going to be Avion Terrell and Colton Hood. Now let's circle back to the New York Jets with a number 16 overall pick. Now you address the defense with David Bailey. Do you take an offensive player here? Address that side of the ball. Maybe later on in the draft, you could take a Garrett Nussmeier or a Drew Aller, who Drew Aller apparently is linked to the New York Jets. The Jets are high on him. Or do you take Omar Cooper, who the Jets are also being talked about as being high on Omar Cooper? And I believe it's going to be Cooper out of Indiana that's going to be the selection at number 16. The Jets would love this pick if it happened. Garrett Wilson is viewed as their wide receiver 1, Omar Cooper is their wide receiver 2, and then A.D. Mitchell, who looks strong towards the end of last season, could be their wide receiver 3. The chances I have of all of this happening, 65% chance that they go in the direction of wide receiver, so that'd be either Omar Cooper or Casey Concepcion, depending on who the Rams do or do not take. A 30% chance that it could be Colton Hood or Avion Terrell, just bolster that secondary. Or a 5% chance that it could be Keldrick Falk. Hey, let's get fancy here. I think it's highly unlikely, but they could pull the Atlanta Falcons. How last year, Jalen Walker and James Pierce were 2 first-round picks, just got their edge rush needs out of the way. Let's circle back to the Baltimore Ravens, who have this number 17 pick after trading back with the Detroit Lions. And would you look at that? So many offensive linemen for the Ravens to choose from. And while Spencer Fano might be the best offensive lineman outside of Francis Maianoa, I don't believe they go in the direction of Fanu. I think they go in the direction of interior offensive linemen because they lost Tyler Linderbaum in free agency and they need to bolster guard and center. Guard and center is a bigger need than guard and offensive tackle. So even though Fano has the flexibility potentially to play inside, play at guard, or if you want to play him at tackle, get Roger Rosengarten to play inside at guard, that could happen, but I think they want to go in the direction of true interior line experience. And in my eyes, Vega Ioane might be the best option for the Ravens at number 17. So whether the Ravens stay at 14 or they trade down, I believe offensive line is the play. I personally am taking Ioane, but there's a 90% chance that it's going to be an offensive lineman in general. So Ioane, Fano, maybe even Maui Noah if he were to fall. And there's a 10% chance that if Omar Cooper or Casey Concepcion is still available. They might go in the direction of receiver, but I believe it's going to be offensive lineman with a first-round pick for the Ravens. At number 18, the Minnesota Vikings. They need a safety. Harrison Smith, not a Minnesota Viking anymore. Dylan Thieneman has been talked about as the second best safety in this class. It's also been talked about as Emmanuel McNeil-Warren could climb up as draft boards and you could go on a safety run. But I'm going to go with Thieneman just because of the 40 time that he had at the combine. Again, just like Sonny Styles, I was in the stands when I watched that and my mouth was open. Pause. The odds of this happening, 70% chance that it's going to be Thieneman, 30% chance that it's going to be a corner in either Avion Terrell or Colton Hood. Either way, 100% chance that it's going to be the secondary that they're going to be addressing at number 18. The number 19 pick, the Carolina Panthers. Could they go 3 years in a row and taking an offensive weapon? I'm going to go ahead and say that the Panthers are going to be drafting Kenyon Sadiq, tight end, out of Oregon, but it's very, very close. They could go in a different direction. They love Oscar Delp, the tight end out of Georgia, so that could be a second or third round selection for them, but they also need to improve their secondary and get a cornerback in Avion Terrell or Colton Hood. But the odds that I have are 55% chance that they take Kenyon Sadiq, 45% chance that they go in the direction of cornerback with Terrell or Hood. I'm going to go with the odds. I'm going to just say that Kenyon Sadiq is going to help out this passing offense. Xavier Legette, we're still trying to get a feel if he can work out. Ted McMillan, we know the Rookie of the Year is the real deal. Add in another offensive playmaker, there shouldn't be any excuse for Bryce Young not to perform well in 2026. The number 20 overall pick is held by the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they were in the market for an edge rusher and a cornerback with their 2 first-round picks. They decided to take a corner at number 12. At 20, Keldrick Falk, the next best edge rusher after Ruben Bain, he's gone. You also don't have a second-round pick because after the number 20 pick, the next pick that you have is number 92. I'm going to have the Texans trading up from 28th to 20th and select Spencer Fano, offensive tackle out of Utah. The official compensation, the Texans are trading their 28 and their 38 to move up 8 spots to 20. Now, why would the Texans do that? Well, first off, there hasn't been a run on offensive linemen, so while there are still very good offensive linemen, which is one of the biggest needs that you have, go ahead and trade up 8 spots and take them. But also, you can afford to do it because you have 2 second-round picks, so it's not that big of a loss for the Texans. Fano provides that flexibility to play either inside or at tackle, which is a big need for the Houston Texans. So I'm going to say that the probability of all this happening, I'm going to say it's a high probability that the Texans are going to be trading up, a 70% chance that they do, and 30% chance that they're staying put. Now, if they're staying put at 28, I can't give you specific player names on who they're going to be drafting. It just depends on how the draft board falls, but more than likely, it would be an offensive lineman that they take at number 28. Now on to number 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hey, we are officially in Ty Simpson territory. The late first, early second is what scouts and experts are talking about, that this could be where Simpson is drafted. A lot of teams might be trading up to try to grab Simpson in the late first. Could the Steelers squash the hopes and dreams of all these teams and just take him at number 21? The answer, in my opinion, highly unlikely. I think they're going to go in the direction of offensive tackle because Broderick Jones, their first-round pick from a couple of years ago, he was underwhelming last season. So I think they don't want to play around with that. They don't want to mess around with it. So they're going to take Caden Proctor, the next best offensive tackle on my board. I think Monroe Freeling as well is in the conversation. Also Spencer Fano. But if I had to put a percentage on it, I think 97% chance that it's going to be an offensive tackle, one of those 3 guys. And then a 3% chance, if they're feeling crazy, they get Ty Simpson. Number 22, the Los Angeles Chargers. I believe this is where we're going to see another trade happen. The Chargers trade out of the first round, and they trade back 12 spots from 22 to 34. And the team that moves up to 22, the Arizona Cardinals, to select Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. The reason why this trade could be happening, first with the Chargers, one, they only have 5 picks in the NFL draft, so they could use more draft capital. And the official compensation that I have for this trade is the Chargers trade their 22nd pick for the Cardinals 34, 65, and a 2027 second-round pick. So the Cardinals are giving up a lot to move up 12 spots. The 2 positions that the Chargers need to work on, interior lineman and edge rusher, they've been linked to Gabe Jacas, the edge rusher from Illinois. They like him a lot, but then also Emmanuel Pregnon, if you're looking at a high second-round pick on an offensive guard, more than likely those 2 guys are going to be around 34. So it makes sense to try to get some draft capital, get an extra pick. And for the Cardinals, this obviously makes sense because you get your quarterback of the future, Gardner Minshew, who they signed in the offseason, and Jacoby Brissett. Those 2 guys are going to be the veteran presence. But the QB of the future, Ty Simpson, Arizona Cardinals. For the Philadelphia Eagles, they could go in the direction of offensive tackle at number 23 because Lane Johnson, you don't know how much longer he's going to be playing. Landon Dickerson as well. You have no idea how much longer he's going to be playing. Howie Roseman, with the lack of offensive tackles being taken so early in this draft, is going to get praised once again on being this brilliant GM, just sticking to his guns, standing his ground, and just picking at number 23. And the next best offensive tackle that I have on the board is Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle from Georgia. They could go in the direction of Caleb Lamu if they favor him as well over Freeling. But either way, 85% chance that they go OT. 15% chance that they go wide receiver. Denzel Boston would be the next wide receiver available in this mock draft, just because you don't know what's going to happen with A.J. Brown. And here we are back with the Cleveland Browns at number 24. So we talked about the biggest needs that they had, the two biggest ones, wide receiver and offensive tackle. Will they address the receiver at number 6, 24? This is your chance to address offensive tackle. So you've got to go on this offensive tackle run. You've got to feed into that. You've got to take the best player available, and that is Caleb Lamu, the teammate of Spencer Fano from Utah. Probably 95% chance that they're going to be taking Lamu or Freeling because DeJuan Jones right now is your projected starting offensive tackle. They want to address that. There's a 4% chance that it could be Colton Hood or Avion Terrell addressing a corner need. And then a 1% chance that it might be Ty Simpson. And honestly, it might be more like 0.5 or 0.01% chance. I don't think it's very likely, but crazier things have happened, so I'll just throw his name out there. The Chicago Bears need an edge rusher at number 25. That's where I have them taking Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher, who's 25 years old, but he's still proven to be effective and can be effective starting day one. The free agent signing from last year, Dayo Adengbo, who came from the Indianapolis Colts, hasn't worked out so far. I'm not saying that he's completely a bust, but you don't want to take any more chances or any more risks for a team that went to the playoffs last season. Go ahead and address your edge rushing needs. So I have them taking Mesidor, but there's a 90% chance it could be either Mesidor or Zion Young, depending on who the Bears favor. And a 10% chance, I'm going to throw Peter Woods in there, who's been talked about as being a first-round talent, but he's more of a defensive tackle, and you need more of like a edge rusher. So that's where I have the Bears taking Akeem Mesidor. The Buffalo Bills at number 36 could go in a lot of different directions. Listen, it could be wide receiver. It could be linebacker. It could be, I wouldn't even throw out defensive tackle. We talked about Peter Woods with the Chicago Bears. It might be Peter Woods. Highly unlikely, but it could. They could use an edge rusher like Cassius Howell or Zion Young. The direction that I think that they're going to go is linebacker. I have C.J. Allen as the next best available linebacker outside of Sonny Styles. So I'm going to say that they draft C.J. Allen, linebacker, Georgia. They were ranked 28th in rushing yards allowed last year. They need to bolster that front seven. Jim Leonard, he's transitioning into a 3-4 defense. They already signed Bradley Chubb in the offseason. Gregory Rousseau is probably going to be, from putting his hands in the ground to more of a standing up 3-4 edge rushing linebacker. Then you have Ed Oliver and Deion Walker, who can work as like the 3-4 defensive ends and nose tackles. So at that point, the weakest point on your defense might be Dorian Williams, one of your inside linebackers, and that's where C.J. Allen can come into play. So the odds of them taking a linebacker, it's 40%. It's very close that they might go in a different direction, but C.J. Allen, Jacob Rodriguez, Anthony Hill Jr., whoever they favor, 35% it might be Cassius Howell or maybe even Zion Young. DT isn't too big of a need, but if they wanted to mix up and bolster their run defense, Peter Woods might be an option. And then a 10% chance that they might go in the direction of wide receiver and take Denzel Boston. Highly unlikely, in my personal opinion. They spent a second-round pick on DJ Moore. And Joe Brady, the way he operates, he just likes to spread the ball around. Probably won't go wide receiver in round one. The San Francisco 49ers have a question mark with Trent Williams. Again, another contract dispute. We don't know what's going to be going on. Connor Colby is a wait-and-see project, so you don't want to start him on the offensive line. You would love some depth. Let's go with Blake Miller, the best available offensive lineman in this draft that's remaining at pick number 27. The 49ers are contending. They are not preparing for the future, but Blake Miller does provide a solution to win now, but also prepare for the future in case the contract situation and the disputes does not work out with Trent Williams. So I have a 65% chance that it's going to be Miller or maybe even Max Ihanachor, the lineman from Arizona State. A 25% chance that it could be Cassius Howell or Zion Young to address their edge rushing need. And then a 10% chance to address the secondary with Colton Hood and Avion Terrell, who we've been throwing out their names ever since pick 15 or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So one of those two guys could go as high as number 15, but in this particular mock draft, they're falling to number 27. Now we move on to number 28, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, the Houston Texans traded up to number 20. The Cowboys traded back to get number 28 and pick 38. So with 28, they needed to address the edge. They got their cornerback at number 12. At 28, they get lucky. Zion Young is still available, and so is Cassius Howell. I'm going to have him go in the direction of Zion Young. Now they address their edge rush, and they address their corner situation. Now at pick 38 from the Houston Texans, they could go down the route of taking best player available if they really wanted to. The odds I have of all this happening, 90% chance that it's going to be edge rush between Young or Cassius Howell. 5% chance that it might be a middle linebacker, inside linebacker, and Jacob Rodriguez or Anthony Hill, or maybe even C.J. Allen, depending on who the Bills do or do not take. And then a 5% chance that they address the safety, which would be Emmanuel McNeil-Warren as a next best available safety, who some people are saying could sneak into the end of the first. Pick 29, the Kansas City Chiefs, who still have this pick despite trading up 2 spots from 9 to 7. Now they address their edge rushing at number 7, and they can address their corner situation. Finally, we've been throwing out the names of Avion Terrell and Colton Hood for so long. Let's go ahead and give the Chiefs Avion Terrell, cornerback from Clemson. This is pretty self-explanatory. They lost Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson in the offseason. They need to address corner, and if you address edge at the top of the first, then this is going to be a corner pick. 97% chance that it's going to be either Avion Terrell or Colton Hood. There's a 3% chance that it could be Denzel Boston. I'll throw his name out there. They could take a wide receiver in the first round. Very, very highly unlikely that happens, in my personal opinion. 2 cornerbacks in a row. Could it happen? I think so. At number 30, the Miami Dolphins select Colton Hood, cornerback, to address their corner need. Wide receiver was already addressed at number 11 with Jordan Tyson. And now you address the secondary and the defense. And this could be either Avion Terrell or Colton Hood, depending on who the Chiefs do or do not take. But I'm going to say it's a 90 or an 80% chance that it's going to be either Hood or Terrell. There's a 20% chance that they could go in the direction of offensive line. And the next best available offensive lineman that I have on the board is Max Ihanachor. But corner is more of a pressing need. Storm Duck is your starting corner right now. You're going to have to add some depth to the secondary, so I'm going to have them taking Colton Hood. Number 31, the New England Patriots. I think this is kind of self-explanatory. If the board were to fall this way and Denzel Boston is still available, you're going to have to go in the direction of Denzel Boston. Stephon Diggs, moved on from him as your wide receiver 1. I mean, there really isn't much of an analysis outside of that. A 90% chance that they take Denzel Boston is what I have. There's a 10% chance that it might be Cassius Howell or another edge rush, but I'm going to say that wide receiver is the most pressing need for the New England Patriots to improve that offense. Give Drake May a weapon. Denzel Boston to the New England Patriots. And then the end of the first round, pick number 32, the defending Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks. They're in a position where they only have 4 draft picks. But who's a team that could trade with the Seattle Seahawks? I'm going to throw in the Tennessee Titans as a team that's going to trade back into the end of the first round to select someone at pick 32. Why this makes sense for the Seahawks? First off, instead of having 4 draft picks, now you have 5. That makes sense. You're trading back from 32 to 35, so you're only going back 3 spots, meaning that you can still get someone that is a first-round talent that falls to you at pick 35. There might be a few players that they're thinking about taking. For instance, they need a cornerback. They could use edge rush help. They need a running back, maybe to be a complement with Zach Charbonnet. More likely than not, an impact player at one of those positions will still be around at pick 35 because the teams ahead of them, the Tennessee Titans, the New York Jets, the Chargers, who traded with the Cardinals, now they have pick 34. And then look at the players that they could be taking. Cassius Howell, they need an edge rusher. A cornerback, Chris Johnson, who could be available. He's rising up draft boards. But then also a running back, their fallback option, because there's no way the Titans, who just drafted a running back, or the Jets, who tagged Breece Hall, or Chargers, who drafted Amari Hampton last year, they're not taking a running back. But the Seahawks could, and that's their fallback option, Jadarian Price. Now for the Tennessee Titans, why would they trade up? Well, would they want to leapfrog the LA Chargers, who are at pick 34, who need to address the 2 remaining needs that the Titans need to address, and that is offensive line and edge rush help. I'm going to go in the direction of an offensive lineman because, man, just keep on bolstering your offense. You took Jeremiah Love, but what good is he if you don't have an impactful offensive lineman? Cam Ward was running for his life last year. Take Max Ihanachor, offensive tackle from Arizona State. This could also be Emmanuel Pregnon if they wanted to work on their interior offensive line. But either way, one of those two guys, a 60% chance that they go in the direction of offensive line if they were to trade up, and a 40% chance that they go with edge rush help, and that would be Cassius Howell. Whew. That's it for this NFL mock draft. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hey, if you hate it, let me know. Be honest. In this particular mock, we saw 5 trades happen, and the winners, in my personal opinion, might be the Kansas City Chiefs, the Miami Dolphins, the Dallas Cowboys. If there's another team that you felt like won in this draft, let me know your thoughts down below. We're not going to be doing a live stream on day 1 because there's a lot of people that do day 1 live streams, but there's not a lot of people that do day 2 and day 3 streams. So if you want to be a part of something where you get to interact with me live and talk about the draft as it's going on, I'm not particularly sure which days, if I'm going to do one or both days, I'm going to be streaming, but that is an option. So just subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date if there is going to be a live stream on one of those days. With all that said, thank you guys so much for sticking to the end of this video, and I'll see you next week for the draft.